and Boston Latin was grueling. But nonetheless, I smoked a lot of weed while I was there. I hung out a lot. I did my social butterfly thing and ended up going back into Reading and graduating from Reading. And prior to that, before I graduated, I ended up getting pregnant with my first child, Tariq. So my son, Tariq, came when I was about 17 and a half. So I was a teen parent when George Bush Sr. was the president of the United States, talking about welfare moms and coining that term and putting that narrative out. And so I therefore had to struggle with that. I was suicidal for a period of time. I didn't tell anybody I was pregnant for 7.5 months. I ended up sharing the story with my best friend Steve and Pam at the time, and writing letters to like my parents, because for me, as coming from a prominent Roxbury family, and at that time I was also newly engaged in this whole idea of Christianity. This is 1987, 1988, and I was young in that.
Wait.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. You didn't tell anybody for 7 months?
For 7.5 months. I did it. I dressed like TLC. So I had big t-shirts, big sweatshirts, and I was really small back then. So I did it well.
I didn't know that you were affected like that.
Oh, it was psychologically, it was it was tormenting. Like, I remember that.
That's kind of, you're kind of, you even growing up, you've never really shown us, like, we don't get to see mom, like, hurt. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, like, that's interesting to hear.
I guess because of my lioness status, I have to be the one that always kind of, protects you guys, and just, now we have very open conversations. I guess I don't even think about it that way, but I would share it like openly.
So how did those type of experience lead to like what you do? Like, I know you started getting into makeup. Right?
Oh yeah. So I've always had this thing with like beauty. I've always had this thing, like growing up in the 70s and 80s. See, I don't know all of your ages, but I'm gonna just put it out there. You're privileged. You all saw Black people on TV. So when Roots came out, I was considered a slave. I was called Kizzy. Not that there was anything wrong, because they were Africans who were enslaved, but it was about status too. It wasn't just about race. It was about me coming from the city, an urban situation. They only knew Facts of Life. There was a show called Facts of Life with a black girl named Tootie who roller skated. And then Janet Jackson came. So anytime there was somebody black that came out, I looked like them. They would correlate that person with, I guess my person. And so for them, they couldn't conceptualize, because they didn't know, they did not physically know any black people. There was one black family in the whole town of Reading when I was growing up. So, and it was culture shock, because for me, here I'm coming from Roxbury, which was like super uber Harlem black at that time. Old Harlem, not gentrified Harlem. And so for me, growing up in a family that drummed, wore African garbs, had afros, got their first afros at a Nubian Ocean, because a Nubian Ocean was a barber shop before it was a convenience store. Brother Malik Abdel Khaled, the founder, he was a barber, and so were a few of his sons. Brother Sharif, who is a mentor of ours.
Roxbury people know.
Yeah, it goes deep. It goes deep. But for me, I think the artistry side came out of my family, because we sang, danced. Music came on before TV ever came on. So you would wake up with music. There was always artwork around my house. There was always a vibration that I think osmosisly must have taken hold inside of me.
So basically you became this all-around type of thinker, because you've had so many different influences in your life.
I think it helps me with people. I understand people better, not better, but I think I have a good understanding of people, of different backgrounds, walks of life, income statuses, educational attainments. You know, because part of my teenage years, when my mom moved around a lot more than my dad. So we lived on Dudley Street, 622, across from the basketball court, and that was just big fun to me. Being out in the hood was everything to me because it gave me the freedom to explore through the lens of hip hop. And hip hop was new in the early 80s. It became mainstream in 1979 with Sugar Hill Gang. And so, you know, growing up in this really exciting environment and having a lot of, you know, I was always attracted to, you know, bad boys and, you know, fast times and fast culture because I tend to move in that realm very easily. But I still have friends. I mean, most of my friends are dead, actually. A lot of my friends have died because the crack epidemic hit. And I remember that when there was that divide in this really dark time. And a lot of my friends were taken from us during that time. And then some of them I still, you know, have good relationships with.
You speak of those dark times. Are there any like mistakes that you made that you regret now?
All day.
What would just tell us not to?
Mistakes. I mean, you know, decisions that may not have reaped the best fruit, yes. I mean, unprotected sex, you know, one of them, I think, you know, not really understanding how to protect myself and my health and really, you know, protect my heart, because a condom can't ever protect your heart, but obviously we want to wear them, you know, if we're sexually active, especially as a young teenager, becoming sexually active really young without guidance. Like, you know, having parents that were really great, but they grew up as baby boomers and didn't really talk about sex, you know, so it was more of an after conversation, you know.
Yeah.
And so I actually had a miscarriage when I was 15. I got pregnant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had a miscarriage, and so I could have had a child prior to Tariq.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
as a really young mom, as maybe a sophomore in high school or something.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you handle all of this
It was the
adversity?
80s. You just handled stuff. It wasn't. We didn't have all of these like, oh, self-care. Oh, you know, let me have a safe space. There wasn't any of that. I mean, we're blessed to have those things now, but you went through life. This is kind of, you know, just part of the journey and hard knocks, and you just keep it moving. I thank God for my family because I think I derived a lot of strength. I had 3 strong matriarchs in my family and 2 strong patriarchs because I never got to meet Janaea's father because he died when Janaea was 12. So, but I knew his namesake, my Uncle John, and then my cousin John New, who was John New, the new John, you know, because my family was creative like that. I mean, this is the stuff, I mean, rock to rock. We, you know, my mom for a second was into Egyptology, you know, so I understood kind of, you know, some concepts I think that were before their time. My mom was a vegetarian and a vegan in the 70s, doing yoga, you know, doing things way before, you know, growing her own food, growing cannabis and all kinds of things.
Yeah. So all these things, they have to be your inspiration for you to get into having your own business. So let's segue into your understanding of you wanting to work for yourself. How did you know, and when did you know that you wanted to work for yourself?
Well, as a child of the 70s, we may not have had a lot of Black role models or icons, but there were some out there. And there were also just some women in general, that it was a time where I think women were breaking out and women were saying that, you know, I can bring home the bacon and I can fry it up in the pan. There was this whole commercial around, I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and never let you forget you're a man because I'm a woman, actually. And so there was this, it seems archaic, but it was actually really strong in feminine power. There was Wonder Woman, there was Almighty Isis. There were these characters that I looked at. There was Charlie's Angels. You know, we played Charlie's Angels growing up. You know, and it was for us a way of I guess play and expression. But now looking back and understanding, watching Diana Ross in Mahogany, or watching her play Billie Holiday, or you know, just seeing Jane Kennedy, seeing Lola Falana, seeing, you know, these powerful black women on the screen, and then also seeing powerful black women in my family. One of which was my aunt. Her original name was Carol Bowden. She was one of Janae's sisters. She actually took my name, and she legally changed her name to Kaidi, and it just gave me all the esteem in the world. And rest in peace, Auntie Kai. She was Big Kai, was Little Kai, and she was a businesswoman with a master's degree, traveled to Tanzania.
She taught Cali?
Yes. Who lived in Baldwin Hills in Cali before she passed.
Oh,
she was the joint. And so
man.
I had strong, iconic women and role models inside of my own family. My Auntie Evie, my Auntie Charlotte, you know, these women who were, you know, working outside the home, raising families, you know, in corporate offices or in higher up, you know, educational positions. And so it was easy for me to be able to think that this is not impossible. You know, I didn't have, you know, I grew up, even though I had, you know, my mom and my dad were separated or whatever, I never felt those effects like some folks had. You know, I think I was very privileged in those ways.
Yeah.
You know, to have very strong roots.
So you definitely have like a lot of different outliers that have pushed you into the person who
I would say I'm an outlier.
You are, and
Yeah.
but also like the family that we have.
Yeah.
I guess the family that we have has allowed you to create some space for yourself to think of yourself as more.
Yeah.
And that you can do more.
Yeah.
You know, these other women and these other people have done more.
Yeah.
And then having dad around also, did he give you any courage? How important is it to have a team member or a team period on whatever you're doing, whether it be marriage or a business, just in general?
I wouldn't be the person that I am without my partner, my soulmate, because, you know, there's a proverb that talks about iron sharpening iron. When you have somebody that can help be very, you know, direct with you but yet loving, and someone who's very kind-hearted but honest, someone who is supportive and very self-confident at the same time, I couldn't ask for a better partner in crime. Like my heart changed. You know, when we were at Latin school, we actually had a crush on each other. He kissed me in the hallway of a building that was, what was that? Bay State College, which is now Mass College of Art, which used to be RCC, by the way.
This is middle
because
school,
that
right?
was Roxbury.
Seventh grade?
Yeah, that was 7th grade, probably 1982. That's what I would guess.
No, it's before that.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, well, 81, I was still at Reading because I was there for the Olympics of 1980. And so that's how I kind of gauge it, but y'all, you're keeping this there.
It's beautiful nonetheless.
Thank you. And so I think we, you know, exchanged a soul kiss there. And because we didn't come back together until we were about 19 and 20, through our scholarship program, which came out of Project Reach. And so the Freedom House. And we were in a scholarship program, a leadership program called Project Reach. Anybody know Carolyn Crockett, Tito Jackson, Greg Ball, Lori Nelson. There's tons of us that were trained and also given scholarships to go to college. And so we were fortunate, and I didn't finish college. We both actually did not finish college. We ended up falling in love.
So you
In
did.
1990, we fell in love.
So you did finish college, so it makes it even more important to have somebody
I went
else
to
on the team.
Bentley,
Yeah.
like thinking that, okay, I'm going to be a businesswoman, right? But I ended up getting pregnant with Kwame while I was at Bentley. So I had Tariq. He was 1988, which was my year. I loved 88. I graduated from high school. I mean, there were a lot of good things that happened in 88. Good music, the golden years of hip hop, Rakim and KRS-One and, a lot of the foundational members of the hip hop culture. And, I was in college, I was at Bentley. I was on welfare. I lived in Chelsea. I first took over my mom's apartment because she moved to North Carolina and started living off the land in North Carolina. She helped me to graduate high school by taking care of Tariq for those 6 months because he was born in January of 88. I graduated with him in my arms in June of 88 and went on to start Bentley, which I got rejected. But a mentor through my summer program, which was held at Bentley, a mentor, Dr. Avery, got me into Bentley through a program where I had to get like a 2.5 or more, and then that summer, and then a 2.5 or more that fall, and I could enter. And so I started Bentley. I was driving. My dad gave me a car. He didn't talk to me for a couple of years when I told him I was pregnant. It was rough. It was a rough time, but it helped me to step up. It helped me to actually take on responsibility a lot earlier in my life and like deal with real shit.
Yeah.
Like before a lot of my friends had to. And now, as a almost 50-year-old woman, I'm like an empty nester. You know what I mean? So there are some benefits to having a family early as well. And I also think it's very natural and very much part of African culture to have your children early, as we should. But in Western society, it's not the case.
Yeah. And how, after that, and then you have the rest of us, me, Christian.
Yeah.
How did you start building your other team members, right? So you have your home team. When you started branching out to doing business, like lip hop, or not even maybe starting before lip hop, things that I don't know, maybe starting when you were at Saks Fifth Avenue, and tell us more about building the outside team for your business.
So let's see, I really started to get into beauty, which was my industry of choice after getting burnt out doing youth ministry. There was a program, I'll mention it, Boston Urban Youth Foundation, and there was this guy, I don't remember, Chris Troy. I'm going to say it because I'm going to put him out there. He was going into back rooms with young women. He was doing things, taking young women to have abortions without parental support or guidance. He was a white guy that was doing some real shady things with our children, mainly out of Mission Hill. Those are the population, that was the population that we dealt with. And I told a couple of board members who were pastors, and they fired me and kept him on. And I won't mention pastors, one of which is still here, and they're lucky I don't call them out to this day. But nonetheless, I was burnt out from that because I don't deal with hypocrisy. And so I went into retail. I started working for Lord & Taylor. And so that was just like a Christmas position. Oh, I forgot about Mary Kay. Through New Covenant, I was at New Covenant, which is now Jubilee, but I was there during its New Covenant years, and also a while when it was Jubilee. There were a couple of like powerful sisters that were doing this thing called Mary Kay. So I got involved with that, and Gloria and Jackie Glenn, I don't know if anybody knows her, but she's this powerful sister in corporate to this day. but they were doing really great and pink Cadillacs and all these things, and I was like, oh, what is this? And you know, it's building esteem and all this stuff. And I realized I wanted to be Mary Kay. Like after being in it for a while, I felt like I wanted to be a makeup artist too, versus just selling products and showing somebody else's. Although I respected it, like I didn't really dog it out. And so from there, I did what I had to do to make sure I could assist in the hustle, because you gotta, a lot of times you have to have two people hustling to make sure that the family and the household is taken care of. So we both went out and you know, did the hustle game. And so for the Christmas season, I decided to go into retail. My cousin worked there, my girl Stephanie worked there, and I was probably doing costume jewelry or something like that. And I was talking to this wonderful woman, I love her, Coco Grace, this white girl who was a makeup artist, and she told me what to do. Because at first I was gonna go work for this company called Fashion Fair, and she was like, well, you should really get into skincare before you do makeup so you can understand the foundation of makeup. And so she recommended that I would go to this counter in Filene's called Clarence. So I went there, I got the job, and I started working Filene's downtown basement. I'm sorry, Filene's downtown. And so from there, I just kept reading Essence magazine all the time. This was probably like 1992, and it's right before you were born. And yes, 91, 92, so right after we were married, because we got married in 91. And so, long story short, there was a makeup artist, and she was Jamaican gorgeous. Her name is Arlene. Oh my God, she worked for Clarence, and I used to idolize her. And I told her, she told me this, I had forgotten, but she told me, I told her, I said, I'm gonna take your job. I'm gonna have your job one day. And she, you know, she probably laughed it off or whatever, but I was really just aspirational and wanting to become a makeup artist, and I wanted to work for this company that was brand new to the States called MAC. Okay, MAC was everything. It was still underground back then. They didn't even have a lip gloss. They only had, you know, a few products, mainly lipsticks and eyeshadows. Very, very, you know, obscure. It was the counter that I wanted to work for was in Chestnut Hill at a store called Henry Bindle, which I ended up getting that job. I won out that job because I ended up doing makeup on friends beforehand. My friends were the best friends in the world. They let me do their wedding makeup. To this day, I'm like, oh my God, you allow me to do these things? But then I had them write me letters of recommendation. I took pictures, and so I had pictures of each one of them, like 3. I went to Neiman Marcus to meet Bobbi Brown from Bobbi Brown Essentials, who was one of my icons, right? And so I got an autographed picture signed by her. I took that, put that in the portfolio. I just made it, and, you know, and as a marketer, I can see myself, I can look back and say, oh, I did a good job like branding myself, because I really didn't have tons of experience at all, but I wanted that job. And a white woman named Lorraine Fish hired me. She was British. And it was a wrap. And it was a black woman who ran that store, Yvette, who was married to a Jewish guy. And it was the most beautiful store. It had a 14-karat gold ceiling, and it was called the Gilded Cage. And so it was like everything working there. So I went there, and you were born at some point. I remember you would drop me off. I mean, we would hustle. You were working nights. You would take care of the boys during the day. Because you were still too young. This is how he taught you how to read at 3, because he was taking care of you. I would go to work, you know, he would pick me up from work, and then he would get some rest and go, you know, just start working again that night, like midnight. And it was a grind. So that was the first part, you know, of my career.
Did you take anybody from these places that you worked to make your team for Lip Hop? So, I mean, if you want to get into what Lip Hop,
yeah. So from 1993, 1994, I did MAC. I was a counter manager for Trish McEvoy, and I was a top seller. I was always a top seller wherever I went, and I always would build a customer base, so they would follow me. I introduced a lot of brown skinned girls to makeup, because Boston was not like it is today. Sisters would not wear makeup at all, like not even a brow, Okay, where's the brow? No brow, nothing, seriously. And so back then, it was kind of like, oh, I don't need makeup. Where I would tell them it's not a need, this is just something that makes you feel good or it highlights your beauty. And so long story short, I went from Henry Bendel to working at Saks Fifth Avenue for 3 years for Bobby Brown Essentials, because I told her that. I said, I'm going to work for you one day, when I met her at Neiman Marcus. And she did my brows. She complimented my brows. I was like, God, thank you. And so that was like the biggest thing for me. And it was a huge thing even walking into Neiman back then. I remember it was like huge because, I mean, that was something that brown people did not really do, was shop at Neiman Marcus. And so I think these experiences and being a resident makeup artist at Saks Fifth Avenue, it gave me the inclination that there was a gap in this market. And there were see, y'all got all this Rihanna, what is it? Fenty. Y'all got Fenty for days. You got all these brands now, all of a sudden, everybody's PC and everybody's, pro brown. I would have people walk in and as a makeup artist, oh no, that's, too, oh no, don't give me that color. One person, oh God, what did she say? There was one customer, I just wanted to punch her in her mouth. Just the comments that you would get, the racially charged and undertone about brown. They would say it looked like shit. They would, oh no, don't put the brown colors out. Keep them in the back. So you couldn't even have it on display. And so these things charged me and they empowered me to understand that there's a need. And so that was kind of one of my first, understandings of demographics and target market and retail. And what does it look like to fill those things? Like, what would this look like? I had a couple of different concepts, one called brown sugar. Do you know that, Chris? Brown sugar. At one point, and I wish I would have done it, I had one called Brown Skin Girl. Oh no, Brown Skin Beauty. Brown Skin Beauty. There were a couple of different iterations before we came up with hip hop, and Dad came up with the name hip hop. And we're, the 80s children of hip hop, of the actual era of the golden age. And so I had one called Spectrum. There was a line called Spectrum. I mean, I was doing really interesting, very transformative ways of presenting my colors. My colors were gonna go from the darkest of darkest shade called Sudanese chocolate all the way to the lightest of light, and range from the perspective, which it should be, which is a global perspective, because it should go from the darkest of dark to the lightest of light, because the majority of folks are brown. So there were things that really gave me agency to put something out there that was multicultural, that was multilingual. I had lip glosses and pout liners, which were eyeliners and lip liners at the same time. And at this time, this was really like very new, like to have a product. I might have a lip pop down me.
Didn't Joelle model for you?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, I remember that.
I have like, I wish I would have bought stuff now. I didn't even think about it. But I have pictures of Joelle because I always was obsessed with her beauty. Modeling down the middle of Dudley Street, like over in John Elliott Square, and taking pictures, and I was doing like black lips with like gloss and all kinds of like, very urban. Yes, the fur coat on the rooftop. I was doing photo shoots. I did build a really good team, a solid team, some of which were family members that were part of, like, I would host gloss parties. So as far as distribution, I could not understand how to get my products into stores. And so I started hosting different events inside of the Lip Hop Boutique, which was on our first floor. Got into the Boston Globe, was on Chronicle, was in the Herald, was in Boston Magazine, and my good friends who I grew up with and danced with at Roxbury Center of Performing Arts, Marie Wright, who you guys may know as Free from 106 in Park, who's also from Roxbury, was really big back then. And so she wore my gloss, so I got to say it was worn by Free on BET, and my product was featured in Teen People. So I got national press before any social media, before MySpace, or anything like that, when it was really difficult. And that came about because of the hustle and grind. And somebody I knew, to your point, Monica Koss, thank you, Monica, because her sister Tiffany, happy belated birthday, Tiffany, her sister Tiffany's husband grew up with Wendy Williams' ex-husband, who we got in touch with, went to New York when Wendy Williams was on BLS, gave her the package, she mentions it, and the assistant editor of Teen People contacts me because she heard Wendy Williams say that this is the new Mac.
So you were doing marketing before all this social media matters. So you're doing marketing through, I guess.
It was celebrity gifting. So it was a different type of marketing in where were we, 2000, so it was like 1999, 2000, probably more like 2003, 2004. Another friend who I brought into the lip hop team, and she was my VP of marketing, Auntie Donna, for Reebok. And so I was with her every time she did a Reebok gift room at the BET Awards or at an All-Star game. And so I've met, I've met Alicia Keys, I've met Usher and Chili and Usher when they were together. I met Shaq, I met
Rick James.
Rick James. Yes, that was the story. That one there.
Let's hear it.
So this is a Reebok gift room. This is the year he said, "I'm Rick James, bitch." Remember that?
Perfect.
From BET. And so so first of all, I grew up in the 70s. I was a 70s child, and transitioning from like the late 70s to the early 80s as like a young teen and things of that sort. Rick James, do not think of him as this joke, this Dave Chappelle punchline. Understand that he was gifted and transformative.
Understand his music.
Listen
to his music.
Oh, good. I'm glad you do, because he was, I'm telling you, if you look at his body of work.
He's more than super freaky.
Yes, exactly. And even the super freaky's great, right? Nothing wrong with the little super freaky. So I walk into the gift, so they had suites where they would set it up, they would curate this suite, and they would have all these boxes of Reebok sneakers. And the celebrities would come through the different gift suites. And so he came in and sat down, and I have a picture, it's probably on Instagram. And I'm like, oh my God, Mr. James, I grew up with you. I'm a stan at this point. I'm like a fan and a stan, like super, super duper. And I'm like, I love your music. I appreciate you so much. He's sitting there like that, belly this big, just sitting there. And he has a shirt on, and it looks like it's about to pop open. That's how, his belly is. He's got cowboy boots on. He's got a cowboy hat on. And he doesn't cry. He's just like, thank you, yes, thank you. And his stank way, because he's just stank like that. And then I'm like, I asked for a picture. And so I guess I gave somebody the camera, and I'm leaning over like this, and I'm like cheesing, like, oh man. And he's sitting there like this. Stank, just face, and I just will never remember, I'll never forget that day, because or this time in my life, because I had access, and I was very privileged to have access because of, the team that I have here. Even when Joey was in New York, we used to travel all the time to New York on the Fun Walk, and we would go to fabric stores, we'd do photo shoots, she would do photo shoots, and it was like, there was this creative team, Itasha Jordan, who is now doing big things, shooting Beyonce's mother on covers of Essence. She's from here. Itasha grew up here in Boston. And so, Joey, Itasha, there were artists that were burgeoning up. Damon, who does tattoos. He was one of those artists. Like there was this collective that was kind of a loose collective that was, I mean, it was more than just, you know, me or Joey. There were photographers, John Brewer, that were starting out. Everybody was like cutting their teeth. But it you know, there weren't places like Fairmont Innovation Lab or like Black Market. They weren't platforms for us back then. We had to kind of carve our own way.
So you reach masses of people mostly through people.
Yeah.
Usually.
Word
And
of
then
mouth.
when people say, you know,
Word of mouth.
mostly whatever industry you're in, it's 70 or 80% who you know. You would probably agree
Yeah.
with that, right?
Yeah.
But also that other percentage is the action, right? And the execution.
Yeah.
And having your business in front end and back end, right?
Yes.
How do you lead others to be as motivated as you? And how do you lead them to the promised land, to execute, and then to do it again and over again? How do you motivate people like that? Say somebody's starting a business, you know, and they need employees, you know. How do they get somebody's fire going, you know?
I mean, I think in terms of like motivation, you know, sometimes you have to do a lot of editing. I mean, there's a statement that Toni Morrison, rest in peace, Toni Morrison, but there's a quote that I love that says, "You want to fly, you got to give up the shit that weighs you down." I think a lot of times we have to just edit certain things in our lives and prioritize what it is our goals are and what we want to do in life, because your goal has to become more important than your feelings. Your goal has to become more important than external situations. My husband and I today talking, you know, just having, you know, a conversation, not necessarily an argument, but not necessarily not an argument. You know, just kind of feeding off of each other. And he's like, well, you can't make excuses. You can't put up a barrier. And then I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about SWAT. Let's talk about SWAT. Let's talk about, you know, what it looks like.
Explain what SWAT is.
Okay, all right. So, you know, when you have a business, you have to look at all areas of your business, because there's, I mean, if you want to do this all the time, a lot of times people are like, oh, cycle through a year and then come back and look at your strengths. SWOT is basically your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so we're talking about, at this time, I think we're talking about Black Market. And so we're like, all right, so what are our strengths? And, you know, we're talking about some of the things that I think we do well. And then, you know, I'm like, well, you know, where is it that we need to pivot if there's a way, or if there's a situation that needs shifting? Like, how would we do this? What would it look like? And, you know, I'm saying that there's some things that are just external. You know, Dudley Square is just really, really, really grimy. People don't want to come to Dudley Square as often. You know, there's not many opportunities for people to actually make it a destination and come to shop. Where's the retail mix? Who goes shopping in Dudley? Raise your hands, please. 1, 2. Where do you go?
You did the Kingle, I think Central Body area.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Mario's, I've explored in there a little
Yeah.
bit.
To here?
Yeah.
Areas here? Yeah.
And then, you know, his house, I figured
Yeah.
out a lot when they first started. That
Yeah.
was the spot.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, now Black Market.
Okay. And then who else has a hand up? Yeah, right here.
Every place that she named.
Yeah.
Plus Dudley Cafe.
Yeah.
Kiki's Hair Supply.
Yeah. Even though they follow you?
What do you mean?
You still give them your money? I've been followed in there a few times. Kiki's Hair Supply.
Oh, I never been. I like, if I like need a pair of knockers or like a lip gloss real quick, I would go in there. And then like every other business that she had mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who else? One more. Right here. Back here. A brother. I want a brother.
The bookstore.
Oh,
yes.
I tend to get like
Yeah.
I presented books for my son,
Nice.
and then all the places that were mentioned before.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know,
Let's also shout out the optometrist, Dr. Muhammad.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Shout her out.
These babies.
Optometrist.
yeah, that's my girl Latifah's sister, yes. I think it's important though, because we literally, you know, I'll get on Amazon like this. I'll think about Target like this. But do we really intentionally set our minds to going into Huckham's Corner or to a Dudley Square? Are we looking for brutally black owned? Are we being intentional around supporting local? Are we trying to be thoughtful around handmade? You know, what does this actually look like in terms of where your dollar goes? You know, W.E.B. Du Bois says, wherever you spend your dollar, you give your power, okay? Wherever you spend your dollar, you give your power. And so it's important that we, and I'm saying everybody in this room, I don't care if you're melanated or not melanated, everybody needs to be intentional about this. There is a $247,500 wealth gap between indigenous white Bostonians and indigenous black Bostonians. And so our community has $8 worth of wealth and is trending on having negative net zero by 2030, I believe. And so that's, believe it or not, 10 years from now. It's 2020, y'all. It's 2020. You know, it's not a long time from now. I remember when it was year 2000. I remember 2010. You know, I remember these decades. And I'm like, you know, we've got to be very much, you know, strategic about what we're doing with our resources, how we're supporting, even if it's not an economic support, sharing these events, supporting Joelle in her new role. You know, these are serious things to me, and things that drive me to do the things that I'm doing, which hopefully then empowers, to your question, empowers somebody to say, you know what, I'm gonna launch something too. I'm gonna dream something too. I'm gonna envision something too. I'm gonna partner with somebody or some entity. I'm going to do what I have to do to make something become sustainable.
In saying that, what exactly do you want to be remembered for? Or is it a plethora of things? But is there one special thing that you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for my courage. I want people to say she was courageous enough to stand up for what's right and to stand up for her community. I take this as seriously as being at Harvard. I spent 30 minutes in that chair just meditating because I didn't care if there was one or two people here. It was a matter of this right here is the wealth. This is the human resource that our community needs to be able to become sustainable, to get to the place where we can even imagine. We have to get to the place where we can ideate. We're so stressed. We have so much coming at us every day, and things that some of which are in our control, some of which are derivatives of decisions that we made, maybe not so good decisions, but decisions that you still have to deal with and you're impacted. You know, I think about Bernie's story all the time and having to deal with, you know, family issues and abuse on the sexual side and not feeling protected, but her then saying, you know what, I am going to take agency over my own body, my own self. I'm going to change my narrative, and then I'm going to go out there and inspire folks to do that. When I look at Jessica Pierre and what she does in her blogging, what she does writing for the community, what she does with Queen's Company, these are the things, you know, because I had folks that inspired me, and because, you know, I see the younger generation saying, I don't need a title, I don't need a degree, I don't need somebody to even, you know, deem me important enough to do something. Those are the things that inspire me to keep going, to inspire others. You know, it's almost just like this domino effect, because I always look to the ancestors and then I look to the future.
And I just want to, I have to say that growing up in your household, you and Dad's household has shed a lot of light into my life and has influenced my life, if you haven't noticed already. And your fire, your passion, I mean, you taught me how to get fly. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even you just dressing, you know, you dressing up and you having all these pairs of shoes that Dad complains about. It's like, Mom has like 25 different pairs of shoes, but you don't even, and the craziest part is that you don't even pull them out. You never pull them out. You keep your like 5 pairs that you wear, you might wear consistently.
I'm on the grind right
I
now.
learned about that, but I learned how to be on the grind. And then there's times. There's times in the place on how to move. You know, I learned about running your own business early. I learned about you know, just being independent early through YouTube. And I think that if we leave here with anything, it's about these outliers, right? And having, you know, I'm blessed enough to have 2 parents that are really, really cool, you know, that do different type of things, and have a family that does a bunch of different things. But understand that if you don't have those things, even if you don't have a family like mine, you can still have other outliers that affect you and can lead you into a different place, into a place where you can benefit from it and you can grow from it, right? So, I mean, I appreciate you so much from the bottom of my heart. I love you, and I thank you for being courageous. I think.
I think that it's you know, I can't take the credit because you know, when you have a Harriet Tubman who did 20 trips between Maryland and Canada on foot with Negroes that probably didn't want to be, and the fear that they had to, and that was they were burdened with and forced upon them, you know, when you have Frederick Douglass who, you know, took the young white girl and young white boy, taught him how to read and understood that innately he could not be enslaved, like he could not be a slave. And he sat with like 13 presidents and was probably the most photographed American that ever lived. You know, when you have, you know, Sojourner Truth, who was the realest feminist, the first one, the one who, you know, her and Phyllis Wheatley before her. But when you have Sojourner Truth, understanding her worth, you know, and understanding that the sky was the limit and that she was just as, you know, ain't I a woman, just as important as a man, you know, these are stories that they just embolden me. I have an attitude problem when folks, you know, act as though we're less than. I have an attitude problem because we've added the most cultural value, okay? What are you talking about? I've been inside the pyramids of Giza. You can't tell me that I am not royal and that I don't derive from royalty. I've been to Senegal. I've seen gardens, beautiful spaces in Morocco. I've been on the continent. And that's the genesis story of Black Market. Our 25th wedding anniversary, because we never had this grandiose wedding. We got married at New Covenant after the morning prayer and then went to Bob the Chef afterward and had our honeymoon on Walnut Avenue where you were conceived. Okay, across in the park, okay. We were like, you know, and he retired, he did 25 years a slave at the T for us, for our family, to give me the freedom to do this whole, lip hop, Diamond Girls, you know, all these visions, and he would push me though. He's like, you need to, even with this whole Black Market thing, we would deliberately, I said, maybe let's go to Egypt. I said, I sold him this whole Egyptian thing. I curated the trip with Miss Bernice Robinson Goodnight, who is an amazing traveler if you guys need anything. Aziza Goodnight's mom and Paul Goodnight's wife. Amazing. 21 days in Egypt. We went hot air ballooning, rode on camels into Nubia, speaking the Nubian Ocean family's name. We were on the Nile on a cruise for 5 days. We were in Abu Simbel. You know, we went, I think we took we took 6 different flights and we stayed in 10 different places in Egypt. I mean, it was a trek. We were on the 4-wheelers, the ATVs. We were smoking shisha with the Bedouins. You know, we were all over Egypt. And, you know, people were wondering who we were because we weren't dressed like tourists. And we would tell them, no, we're brand Nubians. We're brand Nubians. That's what we call ourselves. We're brand Nubians. And so when we hit those pyramids and we went inside the belly of the pyramid, I swear we were impregnated. And we came back here, and guess what was happening? African Fashion Week. Nadra had put on African Fashion Week at Hibernian Hall. And I said, you know what? Because we were turning people away. I was there blogging and I was assisting as a volunteer with her and Latifa. Latifa did most of the operations. And I saw this fashion for like this whole, it was packed. I've never seen Hibernian that packed. And the nation did the security, Nation of Islam, they had to turn people away. It was over capacity. And I also helped them with one of the events in JP. And I said, you know, people will come out to Delhi if there's something fabulous. That's what I said. I said it to the wrong person though, because this one didn't want to go say, okay, so why aren't you doing something? How come you ain't doing it? Because that's what he'll say. So don't ask for Chris as a mentor because he's going to challenge you to grow because it's what he does. And he's like, baby, you need to get back. And I'm like reading one of my trade journals, WWD, which is like the fashion and beauty Bible. And I'm sitting over there like, oh, I miss fashion, I miss my industry. And he's like, well, what you gonna do about it? Why don't you do something? You know, and Nubian Ocean is about to close, you know, and I'm kind of like huffing and puffing, like, you know, angry that he's like putting me on the spot. And we go out into Dudley Square at 10:30 at night and we start looking for spaces. We have some capital because he retired, and we look at spaces over where Nubian Ocean is. I'm like, the vibration ain't right. I would love this anchor space, but it's just not right. And then, and shame on you, Western Community Labs, putting a check cashing place in there. Shame on you, David Price. And I've already told him this, and I'm gonna say it again. Shame on you. Then we go into the next corner where Ashley Stewart is, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, definitely not. I cannot stand this part of Dudley. It is a hot mess over here, and there's no, I need something with the energy. I need something at this point with the energy that can help, you know, me to be creative and have creative license. Bird Stop was over where we are, Black Market. It was empty, it was boarded up. There's a picture on Instagram with it all jacked up, and people can't believe it. And then I was like, oh wow, this is kind of cool. I looked in, I was like, yo, this is super dope. And it was empty and raw. Wasn't anything in there. I called the number, it was like 10:36. I called the number, left a message. He called me the next morning and said that they were going to show the space. We went there the next morning at 10 a.m. I felt right. It was new, you know, it was Haley House over here. I was like, yes, I feel good vibrations, you know. And as soon as we walked in, there was 2 other people looking with us. Poker face. As soon as I walked in, I knew I wanted it. And poker face. Never let them see that you want something, because that's when someone else gonna want it too. It's like shopping at Marshall. You're looking at a shirt and there's only one of them. Just put it in your carriage. Put it in there, because you don't want nobody else. You know. Well, I do thrift store shopping, and that's how you have to do it. Because when you get interested, people tend to come in your corner. I'm like, you sit over there, Betty. Okay. And so I called them, got the show through. Literally told them on our way out, as soon as that other couple was in the car, I was like, we want it. Sent me the lease. In 36 hours, it was done.
Nice.
And that was December 2016. Now, I had no idea what it was going to be. Just impregnated from Egypt, right? This energy, came back to African Fashion Week, was electrified by that, and saw something there. And then the space that just seemed like it could be something fabulous. ended up talking to one of our best friends, your godfather, Charles Robson. You guys know Charles, right? And he knew some folks that were going to be trying to do an export-import business from Senegal. We hook up with them. We buy our airplane tickets and go to Senegal in February of 2017. 3 months later, we turn around, we're back on the continent. We go to Senegal and Morocco. It doesn't work out with these folks that we're with, so we break away in the middle of the trip. We still have the same itinerary. I get a new hotel, like everything, because it just, they didn't have the connections they said they had. But since we had that trip to Egypt, I felt comfortable with my situation enough where we could separate ourselves and keep it moving. When we were in Senegal, and we were on the coast, and we went to Gorée Island, where the door of no return was. You know, there was so much vibration and power in Senegal, and so much melanin, that it led me to cry for 3 hours straight about my melanin being raped out of my family. And I became envious and like angry and like, you know, why, how, you know, and then I heard, don't worry, your heart is black. Because I never, you know, I could never reconcile, you know, my great-grandmother, who on my mom's side was half white because her mother was raped by the person that owned her. And I could never reconcile that type of trauma and it leading to me having less melanin. Because in my family, melanin was always celebrated. So it wasn't, you know, although there were pockets of the neighborhood where there was colorism going on, for real, okay? But when I got to Reading, there wasn't no colorism. You was black, and if you was black, you were a nigger. It wasn't, oh, she's light skinned, or, you know, what people will say. I don't say fair, because fair is anybody who's beautiful. And they try to equate fair with beauty and light, and they try to equate dark with demonic and evil. So for me, being in Senegal, going through that process, and then coming to peace, and then us going through this ideation process led me to say to Chris, well, the space lends itself, because I was going to do a boutique called Africa Boutique, and I was going to pull in I met with Joey, I believe. I met with a few folks because I was like, you know, I met with Anna Maven. I met with folks and I was like, you know, I'm thinking about this thing, this boutique, having these products come from the diaspora, you know, women's co-ops and all these things happen. And then I'm looking at the space and I'm like, it's going to cost a lot of money to put a lot of products in this space, because I come out of retail and I know what it costs to buy inventory. And I was like, that doesn't really, that's not going to jive. I'm not going to spend like $250,000 or $500,000 to fill a space, you know, especially in an area that is still transitioning. And long story short, when we were sitting on the beach in Senegal, and it was like this restaurant we were hanging out at, I think I turned to Chris and I said, you know, what if we did like a market? You know, what if we did a marketplace? What if we did something that was cooperative? You know, and what if we called it Black Market? And that's, so on the continent, we were impregnated with Black Market through the Egyptian pyramids, and then on, that was, you know, more northeastern, and then on the western end, we actually named Black Market. And so that's the genesis story of Black Market.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Outliers, environment, all the things that happen in between, the great things. Wow. Are we doing questions or?
Yeah.
All right.
I just before we start the Q&A session, I just want to say thank you. I think your story is a powerful one. That's why we really wanted to feature you first. You said something when you were speaking. You said something along the lines that you thought the difference was that you had access. I think the difference in you is that you have balls. You know what I mean? You have grit. You have courage. You've been a mentor and friend to me for so many years. And I think that, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, and we're talking about not just entrepreneurship, but just making your dreams come true. We live in a world where it's more possible than ever to be whoever you want to be. No matter where you come from, what your story is, you have the power to actually change your narrative. And I think that has been your example to me, to your son, to your husband, to the world. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for being the person that I can always look to for advice, for anything, and that we can always look to, for sure. So I wanted to open it up to you guys to ask her any questions.
Is that Sakina? Yeah.